Hi there, and welcome to Python Conditional Statements on Real Python. In this video series, we'll cover the if statement. You'll use this a lot in your Python journey. We'll cover the else and elif clauses. We'll go over one-liners and conditional expressions. We'll cover the pass statement, and in the last section, we'll summarize and throw together a quick program to utilize all these concepts you're going to learn. With that being said, let's jump into section 1, Introduction to the if statement. So here's the thing about conditional statements. You use them every day. They typically start or have the word if in them. You might say things like, if it is a weekday, I drink 3 cups of coffee in the morning. If I have a free hour, I will watch some real Python videos. If I eat healthy all week, I can eat cake and ice cream for every meal on Saturday. Maybe not every meal, but most of them. And what you're doing in real life with these conditional statements is what we call flow control. The way we typically learn to program at the very beginning is with what's called sequential execution. This is where commands or statements simply run one after the other, always. But what if we want more flexibility? And you can imagine looking at this screen that maybe you don't want to do all these things every day. Maybe you only want to do them on certain days. And that's where flow control and conditional statements comes in. So our days or week will now look like this. If it is a weekday, I drink 3 cups of coffee. If I have a free hour, I will watch real Python videos. If I get through an hour of real Python material, I could watch an episode of Game of Thrones. And if I eat healthy all week and it is Saturday, I'm going to eat cake and ice cream at every meal. So you can see that this lends you some flexibility in the structure of your routine, or in our case, our program. And here we have the syntax for our if statements. We start with the word if. Then we need an expression to evaluate to true or false. This expression is followed by a colon, and then Python will expect a statement that we want to run when the expression evaluates to true. And notice, this is very important, that the statement is indented. So that indentation is very important. It indicates everything that you want to run if your expression evaluates to true. So in this example, say we're running a program and it hits this if statement. The followed diet variable will contain a true or false Boolean value. If it contains true, then our program is going to run the eat cake, eat ice cream, and eat pizza functions. If it is false, nothing will happen. Either way, the program moves on to the next statement or following code after evaluating this if statement. How about we work through a couple examples in the console? Okay, here we are in the console. 2 examples for you. The first one, let's set up 2 variables, x and y. We'll say x equals 10 and y equals 3. Let's set up our if statement. If x is greater than y, remember, we need a colon. And notice here that my console auto-indents for me. And let's do this. We'll print something. So what should happen here? If x is greater than y, this print statement will run. Enter twice. 10 is greater than 3. Scenario 2, let's put a quick list together. Brackets will indicate our list. And let's populate it. We'll put baseball in there. Hockey. What else? Dodgeball. Now, let's set up our if statement to check if something exists in our list. If dodgeball is in sports list, let's print something out. So what do you think? What will the expression evaluate to? There it is. So our if statement checked if dodgeball was in a list. That's true. So it printed, yes, it's a sport. All right, section 2, else and elif clauses. Let's get going. So far, we've covered the if statement. So we have something happening if our expression evaluates to true. But what if we want something to happen on false, or something to happen by default? That's where we'll use the else statement in conjunction with our if statement. Additionally, if there are other conditions that we want to assess, we can use elif or ElseElif to do that. Let's take a look at the syntax for those. So you already know the if syntax. Else is just tacked on and given another statement. So if the expression evaluates to true, run the first statement. Else, run the second statement. And like I said, if you want to evaluate multiple conditions, you have ElseElif, or shortened to elif in Python, to be able to evaluate for multiple conditions and run a statement if one of those conditions exists. In the syntax example, Our program will run through each of these clauses and evaluate for true or false. As soon as it finds a true one, it will run the statement. This is known as short circuiting. So if our second ElseElif statement runs in this example, none of the additional expressions will be assessed and none of the additional statements will be run. So let's jump back into the console and check out an example. Okay, here I am in PyCharm, my development environment. I'm working on a blank Python file here because we're going to make kind of a mini program. You should open up a blank Python file for yourself, and let's put this program together. So I've been talking a lot about eating during these examples, so let's put together a calorie counter app. So we need to start with a few variables. Let's call it calories consumed. Let's say 1,500. Calories in the item we want to eat, and then total calories will be the sum of those two. So first, let's print the total calories we got with an F string. Now we can set up our if statement. So let's say if total calories is greater than or equal to 1,600, don't eat it. Okay. And let's do a condition for if we haven't eaten enough today. Let's say we've eaten less than 300 calories. Print, we want to eat more. Eat a larger portion. And we'll use else for anything in between those two conditions, 300 calories or 1,600 calories. And we'll just say, sure, you can eat. And that should be it. Let's run this. Actually, let's review here. Calories consumed, 1,500. Calories in item, 100. We sum those, print them out, and then we run it through our if statement. Let's see what happens. Total calories a day, 1,600. Don't eat it. What happens if we get under that 300 calorie mark? So let's say we've only eaten 150 calories and our item's 100 calories. Let's run this now. Total calories a day, 250. Eat a larger portion. We are moving right along. Section 3, one-liners. So here's the thing. It is possible to write your entire if statement on one line. And you don't have to use these, but I wanted to leave them in because you might come across them in the wild. So let's take a look at the syntax. So a basic if statement, instead of the statement being on the second line and being indented, just follows the expression with a space between it and the colon. When we want our if statement to kick off multiple statements, we set it up like this with a semicolon between each statement. When we want to use else and elif, those two get put onto single lines. And again, if we want to run multiple statements after those, we separate them with a semicolon. So that's one line syntax in a nutshell. There's no real advantage or disadvantage to using these. It's purely for readability and preference. So it's up to you. And perhaps if you're working for a company, it could be dictated by their style guide. So this is just something to more be aware of than say something dictated by universal Python law. Section 4, Conditional Expressions. Conditional expressions are slightly confusing at first. They kind of look like a one-liner, but they're written differently. If it helps, you can think of them as a one-line if-else statement. Think back to the if-else syntax. A conditional expression is just taking this syntax and streamlining it so it looks like this. You can see now the expression sits in the middle. Statement 1 comes first if expression is true, or else we use statement 2. And you'll see this most often used as a way to assign variables based on the results of a comparison. Let's hop into the console and I'll show you what that looks like. So we need a variable or something to compare in our conditional expression. So let's give it dog lover is true. And let's set up another variable. Let's say you want to use a conditional expression to assign this variable by a dog. So we need our first statement, which will just simply be yes, if dog lover evaluates to true, else Nope, we're not going to buy a dog. So see if you can work this out in your head real quick and then press enter. Oh, I'm missing the R on dog lover. Let's try that again. Now I'll hit up arrow twice to get back to my conditional. Now let's see what the buy a dog variable contains. We get yes. If I switch dog lover to false and run the conditional expression again, buy a dog will be nope. That's it for conditional expressions, my friend. See you in the next one. The past statement. In the next slide, I'm going to show you what the past statement does. Nothing. Isn't it beautiful? You'll use the past statement as a placeholder. You'll hear it called a code stub. And this is typically used when you're building something out and maybe you're on a roll and you just kind of want to put the rough outline out there of your code. And you're going to come back to it later. Past statement is great for doing this. So why don't we jump into the console for an example, and let's jump into the code that you wrote for video 2, the calorie counter app. Let's say you slept on it, you had a great idea, and you want to take this app to the next level, but you want to make some changes. Give this a try on your own. So if I delete this line and try to run this program, I should get an error. Yeah, see, we got an indentation error. It expected an indented block. Now, if I come back in, indent, and give this the pass statement, it won't do anything, but it'll run just fine. There you go. Now you're free to make all the changes to your heart's content without throwing errors. That concludes the pass statement. See you in the next one. High five. You made it all the way to video 6. In this video, we'll put together a food tracker app using all the concepts you've learned in this series, and then I'll summarize everything we've learned. So let's get started on the app. Go ahead and open up your console. So here I am in PyCharm, and I'm going to open up a Python file to contain our app. PyCharm, you can do that with a right click on your project folder and open Python file. Let's call it food tracker. And now I've got a blank Python file to build our app. Let me full screen this here. And we're ready to start our app. First things first, let's print a header for our app. Let's print like 20 or 30 of those. And a title. I'm going to copy this line and do it again. Let's give it a blank line here. All right, so the question we're going to answer with this app is, go back to our cake and ice cream, the most important topic of this video series. It's Saturday. Should I eat cake and ice cream today? So first thing first, let's get a list of days. Let's call it weekdays. We're going to put the first 6 days of the week. So we've got Sunday through Friday. We're going to need a blank list to store our answers. Now we're going to set up a for loop. What this little for loop right here is doing is saying for each item in our weekdays list, we want something to happen. In our case, we're going to ask a question. So let's set that up. And then we want to set up a variable to capture user input from our program. I'll give a little prompt here. We want capital Y or capital N only as our answers. Then we want to take the answer and put it into an if statement. If the answer is uppercase Y, we're going to add it to our answers list. Lists have a built-in function called append, where you can add something to it. And we can print a little feedback here so we know where we are in our program. And to actually get our answer, we're going to use an if-elif-else block. So if len, length, is a function that will give you the length of any list or iterable. If the length of answers is 6, meaning we had 6 yes answers, let's say, yep, eat that cake and ice cream. And then we can check another condition with elif. The length of answers is 5. You did pretty good. So maybe let's just lay off the ice cream. And if it's anything besides 6 or 5, had a tough week. So we're not getting cake and ice cream. Okay. So let's review our app really quick. We print out a header. We have the main question of our app. It's Saturday. Should I eat cake and ice cream today? 2 lists. Weekdays is a list every day of the week. We have an empty list called answers. For each day in our weekdays list, we want to print out a question. Did you eat healthy on that day? There's a variable here called answer that stores the input from our user, which will be a capital Y or a capital N. In a real app, you'd want to validate this input from your user somehow and make sure only certain characters are accepted, but this works for our purposes. And then we set up our first if statement. If answer equals Y, we're going to append it to our answers list. Print a couple statements, and then if the length of the answers list is 6, do something. Elif 5, do something, or else no cake and no ice cream. So let's run it. I'm going to right click and click run food tracker. Okay, food tracker app. It's Saturday. Should I eat cake and ice cream today? Did you eat healthy on Sunday? Yes. Did you eat healthy on Monday? Yes. Did you eat healthy on Tuesday? Yes. Wednesday? Yep. Thursday? Yep. Friday? Yeah. Calculating the answer. Yes. Eat the cake and ice cream. Sweet. So there's our food tracker app. Let's jump back into the summary and wrap things up. So in summary, this video series covered the if statement. It's a way to control the flow of your program based on conditions. We learned about grouping your code in statements with indentation. We learned about branching and assessing multiple conditions with the else and elif clauses. And we talked about some common ways to increase readability and tidiness of your code with one-liners, conditional expressions, and the pass statement. So that's it. Thanks for working through this video series. Please drop a comment and let me know how I'm doing. Have a great one.